Napoleon Hill once said, "We cannot change our destiny by wishing for it. We can only change it through purposeful action." And in all the philosophies he shared, one concept may seem small, yet holds an extraordinary transformative power. Dedicating just 1 hour a day to the deliberate act of investing in yourself. It sounds simple. It even sounds optional. But in truth, this hour is the seed of every revolution, personal, professional, and spiritual. And still, so many never embrace it. Why? Because the world conditions us to believe that the only path to success is relentless motion, an endless grind, a life spent running after results while neglecting the very self meant to achieve them. Most people are still waiting for a break, a chance, a miracle. They chase success through exhaustion, thinking they must sacrifice sleep, meals, even peace, to one day arrive. But Hill rejected that entire premise. He believed in causality, not coincidence, in strategy, not desperation. To him, the formula was clear. Time ownership plus self-discipline equals destiny. And it all starts with claiming a single hour each day. Not for work, not for others, not for the news, the phone, or the world, but for you. This is not the dramatic kind of transformation people hope for. It is quiet, almost invisible, yet unstoppable. Success, Hill taught, is rarely the result of one defining moment. Instead, it is the cumulative impact of silent hours, of daily movement while others remain still. So pause and ask yourself, have you ever been too tired to learn something new? Too overwhelmed to plan for your future? Too late, you thought, to start again? Hill wouldn't judge you, but he would look you directly in the eye and ask one question that slices through all excuses. Do you have 1 hour? Not one more hour of doing what you already do. Not one more hour devoted to everyone else, but 1 hour that belongs entirely to you. 1 hour to pause, not because you're tired, but because you're aware. 1 hour to reflect, not with regret, but with curiosity and courage. 1 hour to confront the questions most people spend their entire lives avoiding. Am I truly living by my own design, or am I merely reacting to life's demands? Am I growing, or am I repeating yesterday on a loop? Am I moving closer to the life I envision, or am I drifting quietly further away? Hill believed that if every person asked themselves those questions daily and then acted to improve within a year, their life would become unrecognizable. Because 1 hour a day doesn't remain small. It adds up, 365 hours a year. That's more than 9 full-time work weeks focused entirely on your own development. 9 weeks to learn, strategize, design, and become. Imagine what could shift if you had that time set aside with intention. And still, people say, I don't have time. But Hill broke down one of the biggest lies we tell ourselves. Everyone has 24 hours. The real issue is that not everyone values one. If you don't claim your time, someone else will. And they won't use it to build your dreams. This isn't a call to sacrifice sleep or burn yourself out. It's an invitation to reclaim time in the most accessible way possible, by starting with just 1 hour. Each day you stand at a crossroads. Continue as you always have, busy but directionless, or stop, realign, and move forward as a deliberate creator. You don't need to start big, just start with 1 hour. 1 hour to think, 1 hour to prepare, 1 hour to grow. Today you choose, or you refuse, but time will pass regardless. One day you'll look back and face the question no one escapes. How did you use your time? Hill would never pressure you, but if you were ready to change, he would hand you a clear path. Begin with 1 hour. He understood that success doesn't happen randomly. It begins with how you begin your day. Not the second hour, not at lunch, the very first hour. Because how you wake up quietly shapes how you live your entire life. This isn't just about forming habits. This is a ritual, an initiation into your own creative power. Most people begin their day unconsciously. They grab their phone, absorb chaos from the outside world, and surrender their mood before they have had a chance to ask themselves, who do I want to be today? Hill refused to let that happen. He called the first hour of the day sacred ground, not a time for reaction, a time for orientation. It's the launch pad for purpose. The most successful people in Hill's studies weren't superhuman. They were intentional. They planted the right seeds in their subconscious while the world was still asleep. They didn't start the day with urgency. They started with awareness. It doesn't need to be complicated. Wake up 30 minutes earlier. Drink water, not out of routine, but to send a message to your body. I am awake. I am alive. I am present. Open a book instead of an app. Write down 3 things you're grateful for. Not because it's trendy, but because gratitude strengthens your foundation. Sit still for a minute. Visualize the person you want to become. Not a fantasy version, but a better version of yourself. These small acts may seem too simple to matter, but Hill understood what most people overlook. The simple things done consistently create extraordinary change. If you win the first hour, you win your mind. And when you control your mind, the day becomes your stage, not your battlefield. Hill never romanticized success. He didn't preach firework mornings. He told the truth. Successful people wake up and follow through, especially when they don't feel like it. Discipline doesn't ask how you feel. It only asks if you're committed. So starting tomorrow, make a new pact with yourself. Before you touch the world, touch your future. Before you react to anything, create your state. Don't wait for motivation. Generate it through movement. Don't just wake up. Rise. Your future won't arrive at 11 a.m. It's waiting for you at 6. It's there, silently asking, will you meet me? Arrive early, not just in time, but in energy, in clarity, in purpose. Because while most are still waking to noise, you'll already be ahead, by choice. Hill taught that you cannot control everything in a day, but you can always control how you begin it. And the way you begin your day, intentionally, calmly, with clarity, is the way you will begin to redefine your life. But protecting that hour, that's the next challenge. Because in today's world, time is not stolen violently. It's stolen politely. Through texts, notifications, requests, each one may seem harmless, but together they dismantle your momentum. One morning hour, left unguarded, vanishes. Not because of a lack of willpower, but because we haven't treated it as sacred. Hill once said, "Nothing great is built from the leftovers of time." You can't create greatness using only what remains after everyone else has had their share. Your golden hour isn't what's left. It's what must come first, not later. Not when you finish your work. Not when it's convenient. First, we protect our money, our reputation, our possessions. Yet we let our time be interrupted, hijacked, and squandered. Hill likened time to money, but even more dangerous. Because a lost dollar can be earned back. A lost hour is gone forever. So why is it so easy for someone to break our concentration with a ping, a message, a call? Because we haven't built a fence. We haven't declared our hours sacred. But Hill would show you how. Draw a line around that time. Post a mental sign. No distractions, no calls, no compromise. Not from anger, but from purpose. Not to escape the world, but to prepare to lead it. Start tonight. Decide when your hour begins tomorrow. Schedule it. Name it. Creation hour. Thinking hour. Growth time. Don't leave it vague. Vague time is disposable. Defined time is defended. And gently tell your family, your partner, your circle, this hour is mine. Not because I don't love you, but because I'm learning to love you better. Hill knew, when you respect your time, others will too. When you set boundaries, the world adjusts. Soon you won't even need to defend your hour. It will defend itself. It will anchor your life. What happens if you succeed in protecting it? Hill said this, you don't just gain an hour, you gain yourself. One focused hour returns to you confidence, clarity, resilience. It does more for your growth than 10 scattered hours of busyness. 1 hour done right will carry you further than days spent reacting to noise. So don't trade gold for dust. Don't say just 5 minutes to check your phone. That 5 minutes will take you far from your focus. You might not find your way back. Don't say, I'll reply quickly. Every time you do, you teach your brain that others can dictate your priorities. Remind yourself, this hour is not for reaction. It is for construction. And if you still struggle to protect it, remember Hill's quiet warning: discipline weighs ounces. Regret weighs tons. It may feel uncomfortable to turn down a request, but what weighs more, a moment of discomfort or a lifetime of stagnation? Because if you don't act today, a year from now, nothing will have changed. The dream will still be a dream. The person you want to become will remain a stranger. So begin now. Schedule your golden hour. Give it a name. Circle it in your mind. It is not a small task. It is the most powerful ritual of your life. The golden hour, when properly claimed and defended, becomes not just a block of time on your calendar, but the cornerstone of who you are becoming. Yet, Hill warned, it is not enough to simply show up to the hour. You must know what to do with it. Your time must be filled not with vague intentions, but with structured purpose. In Hill's philosophy, every action should be tied to a clear and deliberate outcome. To sit down and read aimlessly is not the same as reading with a destination in mind. To train without clarity is not the same as moving your body in alignment with your greater mission. And to write without vision is merely documenting thoughts, not rewriting your life. So before your golden hour begins, before the book is opened, before the first word is written or the first muscle stretched, pause. Sit in quiet just for a few minutes and orient yourself toward your true north. Ask yourself with sincerity and precision, what is my goal? What skill am I building today? What part of myself am I improving? And why does this matter to me so deeply that I am choosing to dedicate sacred time to it? These questions are not distractions from action. They are the engine behind it. Without them, you move vaguely, easily pulled in every direction. But with them, every minute becomes a targeted investment, and every act becomes an arrow aimed at a meaningful result. Hill believed in the power of direction before action because he understood the human tendency to confuse motion with progress. The world is filled with people doing more, achieving less, sprinting forward without ever checking the compass. But a life of depth, not just of speed, begins with orientation. It's like entering a forest without a map. The faster you go, the more lost you become. But if you stop to calibrate, even briefly, you not only know where you're going, you carry the conviction to stay the course when obstacles arise. Hill taught that most people don't fail from lack of intelligence or opportunity. They fail because they lost their sense of direction. They listened to too many opinions, pursued too many goals, consumed too much unfiltered information, and eventually forgot what truly mattered to them. He once said, "A person who doesn't know what they want will always be a victim of someone who does." In other words, if you don't define your purpose, the world will do it for you, and it rarely chooses in your best interest. That is why your golden hour must begin with a declaration. Today, this is who I am. This is what I will focus on. This is the next step I will take toward the future I am deliberately creating. And with that inner compass set, your hour can unfold with power. But don't confuse productivity with progress. 1 hour does not need to be packed with tasks. It only needs to be devoted to one objective, one clarity-driven effort. That might be learning a new skill, refining a mindset, or building momentum on a personal project. Hill advised depth over volume, intensity over busyness. Better to move slowly and intentionally toward a worthy goal than to race quickly in a direction that leads nowhere. So begin each golden hour not with action, but with decision. Decide what matters today. Decide what leads you forward. Decide what will shape your future self, and let that decision guide every step. From that place of intention, even the smallest effort, reading a page, writing a paragraph, practicing a skill, becomes a sacred act. You are no longer acting from obligation. You are acting from vision. You are no longer learning to impress. You are learning to transform. You are no longer reacting. You are deliberately shaping your life from the inside out. Hill believed every person contains within them an inner genius, but that genius only awakens through purpose and clarity. It does not require a year or even a week to be activated. All it needs is 1 hour today, used with full intention. And that hour does not begin with doing. It begins with thinking. It begins with defining who you are, what you value, and where you're going. That simple decision, repeated daily, begins to redefine your very identity. You stop being someone who waits, someone who watches, someone who wonders, and become someone who knows, who moves, who builds. And with each golden hour, your vision sharpens, your confidence grows, your spirit strengthens. Because now your time is not just filled, it is fulfilled. Your hour has a mission, and in time, your life will become a reflection of that mission. But Hill also knew that knowledge, on its own, can be a trap. Knowledge is potential power, he said, but it only becomes real power when applied intelligently and with purpose. You can read all the books, take all the notes, consume endless podcasts and lectures, but if you never step outside your mind and act, you're still standing still. Information without application becomes weight, mental clutter that feels productive, but doesn't actually move you forward. In his classic work, Think and Grow Rich, Hill warned against the seduction of learning without doing. He called it the danger of dead knowledge, where people convince themselves they're growing simply because they are absorbing content. But true growth only occurs when you close the book, rise from the desk, and try something, anything, in the real world. He saw far too many who wore the costume of a student to hide from the fear of failure. They stayed stuck in the theory phase, afraid to make a mistake, while others passed them by through imperfect but courageous action. That's why Hill demanded that every hour of study must end not with inspiration, but with implementation. So as your hour progresses, carve out time not just for absorption, but for execution. If you read about writing, then write, even one paragraph. If you study communication, then speak out loud, record yourself, practice tone and rhythm. If you're learning about entrepreneurship, draft an idea, send an email, launch a small test. One action, no matter how small, is worth more than 10 hours of planning, because each act builds something far more valuable than a result. It builds your self-trust. Hill believed that self-trust, not skill or even intelligence, is the real currency of change. Every time you follow through on a commitment to yourself, you send a message to your own subconscious. I am someone I can count on. And that quiet affirmation, repeated daily, begins to reshape your self-image from someone who tries to someone who follows through. You're no longer aspiring, you're becoming. And in that becoming lies your greatest breakthrough. Not in the accolades, not in the external milestones, but in the shift within, from thinker to doer, from dreamer to creator. Hill once said that the greatest regret at the end of life is not doing the wrong thing, it is doing nothing at all. It is knowing deep down that you had more to give, but didn't move. Don't become one of them. Don't let your golden hour be filled with temporary motivation. Let it be the launch pad of action. Every page you read, every thought you write, every idea you refine must be paired with something real. A step, a gesture, a move. It doesn't need to be large. It only needs to be done. And Hill would remind you gently but firmly, if you learned something yesterday, you must act on it today. Not for applause, not to prove anything, but to honor your own potential. Over time, the compound effect takes hold. 1 hour of intentional action per day becomes 7 per week, 30 per month, over 300 hours in a year. And those hours, unlike anything else, are yours. No one can take them from you. The world may strip away money, comfort, even relationships, but it cannot erase what you've built within through your own consistent action. Hill saw this transformation happen not just in theory, but in the lives of every successful individual he studied. Men and women who did not wait for perfection, they simply began. They acted while others analyzed. They moved first and refined later. They accepted failure as a teacher, not an enemy. They knew that the most lasting lessons do not come from books, but from experience, especially when those first steps are clumsy. So every time your golden hour ends, ask yourself one simple but powerful question. What will I apply from today? Not a list, not a strategy, just one thing. Write it down, then do it, before the day ends. Because Hill believed a single hour of focused real-world application was worth more than an entire day of theory. And when you act, you're not just building skills, you're building identity. You're telling your future self, I am not waiting, I am becoming. That is the greatest reward of the golden hour. Not perfection, not mastery, not even progress in the traditional sense, but the quiet transformation of how you see yourself. You are no longer a person dreaming of change. You are a person creating it. And that identity shift is what changes everything. Because once you believe you are capable, consistent, and committed, no setback can hold you, no obstacle can intimidate you, and no failure can define you. That is how Hill saw greatness, not in bursts of brilliance, but in small, daily acts of follow-through. In ordinary people doing the extraordinary act of showing up for themselves every single day. And in that hour after learning and doing, Hill added one final element, often overlooked but absolutely vital: reflection, the ability to pause, look back, and mine meaning from your own experience. In a world obsessed with acceleration, Hill dared to teach the value of slowing down. He said, life doesn't change simply because you keep moving forward. It changes when you stop to reflect. Without reflection, action becomes mechanical. You may be working hard, but without examining your path, you risk building a life that doesn't align with your true values. Reflection is not a sign of doubt. It is the act of a conscious person reclaiming their power. At the end of your golden hour, carve out just 5 minutes for review. You don't need pages of journaling. You only need honesty. Ask, was I focused today? What did I learn? What did I do differently? What did I delay? And what will I change tomorrow? These questions, answered with sincerity, are worth more than any feedback you'll get from the world. They realign you. They strip away illusion. They remind you that growth is not just about doing better, but about doing differently. You may realize you were distracted. You may admit you missed a step. But in that moment of truth, you take back control. You shift from autopilot to awareness, and slowly you become your own guide. Hill once said, "A life worth living is a life worth recording." Not for pride, but for pattern recognition. Reflection reveals what keeps repeating without serving you. It uncovers the strengths you haven't yet claimed. It shows you not just what you've done, but who you are becoming. And as this habit of reflection deepens, so does your personal power. Because now you are not just living, you are sculpting. You are not just working, you are refining. You are not just busy, you are becoming precise. Over time, you will begin to feel the shift, not just in your outcomes, but in your essence. You will feel less like a reactor and more like a creator. And the difference between those two is everything. Napoleon Hill understood something timeless yet often forgotten. The mind cannot thrive inside a neglected body. He warned that no matter how brilliant your ideas or how vivid your ambitions, they will ultimately be stifled if the vessel meant to carry them, the body, is weary, depleted, or ignored. In his philosophy, the mind and body are not separate battlegrounds but synchronized forces. You cannot expect sustained discipline, focus, or creative flow if the very machine designed to produce them is gasping for vitality. And yet, in the modern world, we talk endlessly about mindset, strategy, and performance, while overlooking the foundation beneath it all, our health. Hill never glamorized exercise, nor did he sell aesthetics or image. To him, physical health was not about looking a certain way, but about preserving the internal strength required to fulfill your mission. He believed in honoring the body not because it must be perfect, but because it must endure. The discipline to pursue your purpose, to overcome failure, to adapt through change. It all begins with a body capable of standing firm when the pressure mounts. And that capacity isn't gifted. It's built 1 hour at a time. This doesn't mean adopting the identity of an athlete or chasing a physique. Hill would tell you to begin with the simplest rituals. Start with light, movement, breath. Walk beneath the morning sun and let the light awaken not just your skin, but your awareness. Let your pineal gland, your inner clock, reset with nature's rhythm. Stretch your spine, twist gently, awaken each joint not for performance, but to whisper to your body, I have not forgotten you. Let your blood move, your lungs expand. Feel aliveness return, not from caffeine or adrenaline, but from motion. Then, as your awareness grows, build your strength, not to impress, but to carry the weight of your vision. Lift not to look good, but to stand tall when others collapse. Move not to burn calories, but to become the kind of person whose presence radiates energy. Hill placed this care of the body not as an optional task, but as a sacred responsibility. Because no dream, no matter how noble, can survive long in a vessel falling apart from neglect. But movement alone was not enough. Hill placed deep importance on consumption, on how we nourish ourselves, hydrate, rest, and breathe. These weren't side notes, they were strategies. He challenged you to ask yourself daily, am I eating to fuel clarity or to comfort emotion? Am I hydrating because I respect the intelligence of this body, or am I numbing fatigue with coffee and sugar? Do I sleep like someone who believes tomorrow matters? Or do I burn the candle not for ambition, but from imbalance? He would not shame you for poor habits, but he would confront you with truth. You cannot demand excellence from a body you constantly abandon. You cannot expect focus while feeding chaos. And you cannot expect calm while depriving your nervous system of restoration. Hill's message was simple but revolutionary. Treat your body not as a problem to fix, but as a force to protect. Schedule your workouts like you schedule your meetings. Prepare your meals like you prepare your presentations. Sleep like someone who honors tomorrow. Because when your body's in sync, your mind expands. Your emotions regulate. Your stress reduces. You become aligned, internally fortified, outwardly unshakable. And once your body is steady, the next hour must turn toward the external realm so many fear and yet must face: money. Hill never shied away from the topic of wealth, but neither did he glorify it. He saw financial strength not as luxury, but as liberation, the capacity to live by design rather than default. And that, he insisted, begins not with earning more, but with understanding. Most people, Hill said, spend their entire lives working for money without ever learning how money works. They chase paychecks, respond to bills, panic over expenses, yet never step back to ask, am I building wealth or just surviving? Hill's golden hour included time each day not just to make money, but to master it. And that mastery doesn't come from magic. It comes from quiet, consistent learning. Sit down with your numbers, not with fear, but with curiosity. Audit your spending, not to shame yourself, but to illuminate what you truly value. Track where your income flows, where it leaks, where it stagnates. Read about compound interest, cash flow, investment strategies, and personal finance, not to pass a test, but to pass a milestone. Write down specific goals, not vague desires like, I want to be rich, but declarations such as, I will earn X in passive income by year Y, or I will reduce expenses by Z% over the next 3 months. This clarity becomes your map. And then, take one small step. Open the account, move the funds, research the asset, sell a skill, begin something, anything. Hill didn't encourage reckless risk, but he had no patience for passive waiting. He taught that wealth begins when you stop outsourcing your financial life to chance or other people. It begins when you build a small system that over time works on your behalf, even when you're resting. An hour a day devoted to financial education and strategic planning can over time shift your entire life. It creates autonomy, the power to say no, the freedom to choose how you work, who you work with, and how you spend your time. This isn't about yachts or watches. True wealth, Hill emphasized, is not display, it is peace. It is being able to walk away from what doesn't align with your values. It is taking care of a loved one without wondering if you can afford it. It is sleeping without anxiety and waking without dread. And that power, like all others, is built, not wished into existence. So sit with your numbers, build your plan, make your move, do it in silence, and let the results speak years from now. But even if you master your mind, body, and finances, if you do it all alone, Hill believed, you've missed the heart of the journey. No success is real, he said, if you have no one to share it with. He saw too many chase individual greatness only to find themselves standing at the peak of their accomplishments with no hands to hold. Connection, he taught, is not a detour from success. It is part of the summit. That's why he carved out space each day for 1 hour devoted not to ambition, but to presence. An hour to be with your loved ones, not in the same room distracted by devices, but truly with them. An hour without multitasking, without rushing, without trying to fix or impress, just showing up with your heart. Sit with your partner in stillness. Listen to your child with full attention. Call your parents. Write a thank you note to a mentor. Ask someone how they truly are, and wait for the real answer. These moments do not scale, do not trend, do not go viral, but they are the thread that holds the fabric of life together. Hill observed the most successful people weren't the most brilliant or driven, they were the most connected. Carnegie, Ford, Edison, they didn't walk alone. They built partnerships, friendships, families, because they understood that in the end, it's not what you achieve, but who you become in the presence of others. 1 hour a day of intentional connection is not a distraction from greatness. It is what makes greatness meaningful. It is how you create a legacy that lasts beyond numbers. And if you think you're too busy, Hill would ask you one question. What is all this success for if you have no one to share it with? And after all these hours of reflection, learning, acting, moving, building, connecting, there comes a point when you must step back and ask yourself, what is the bigger story I am writing with my life? Because Hill's teachings were never just about goals or routines. They were about destiny, about crafting a life so rich with purpose that even the quietest hours feel profound. And none of this requires waiting. Not for the perfect plan, not for more time, not for the right conditions. You do not need to overhaul your life. You only need to command 1 hour a day. Because if you can own 1 hour, you can own a day. If you can own a day, you can own a year. And if you can own a year, you can reshape your life completely. So choose now, not tomorrow, not next Monday, not when the schedule clears. Choose now to rise. Choose now to protect your golden hour. Choose now to read, to write, to walk, to invest, to breathe, to build, to love, to reflect. Choose now to stop apologizing for needing time to yourself. Choose now to stop delaying what your future is begging for. Because when you devote 1 hour each day to becoming who you were meant to be, the world doesn't just watch, it adjusts. Opportunities start to align. People start to notice. And most importantly, you begin to trust yourself again. That's the deepest shift of all. Not the goals reached, but the person you became to reach them. And if you falter, if you miss a day, if you fall into old habits, don't abandon the path. Return to it, quietly, consistently. Hill never asked for perfection. He asked for persistence. Because greatness isn't built in a straight line. It's built in the quiet resilience of starting again and again, until your habits become identity, until your identity becomes destiny. So wherever you are on your journey, at the beginning, in the middle, or starting over, you are not late. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are standing at the threshold of a new chapter. The door opens with 1 hour. One commitment, one step toward the version of you who already exists within, waiting to be summoned. Napoleon Hill once said, "Every adversity, every failure, every heartache carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit." Let that hour be your seed. Water it with discipline, shield it with boundaries, nurture it with awareness, and in time it will bear fruit beyond what you now believe possible. 1 hour, one decision, one life transformed from within.